Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. Whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording, I appreciate you watching. Thank you all for tuning in today. So this week we're finishing up our jQuery module, and one of the things that I said last week as we started our jQuery module is that I don't really necessarily care that much about you all learning a bunch of jQuery, right? Like there are some activities and some things that I would like for you all to know how to do. But really, like the more important thing to me is that you can read it and understand it and maybe manipulate it and do some things with it. So that's why I put a lot of different jQuery options in the course for you all to look at. It's why I put out the supplemental videos last Friday. And it's why I'm kind of handling these live sessions the way I am. And, you know, I'm also kind of encouraging you all, because it is part of the tool, is that, you know, you kind of learn how to go through and look at the documentation and figure it out that way. You know, that is one of sort of the secret tools of this course, is kind of figuring out how to read documentation. And then, you know, utilizing your teamwork to be able to work together to create things. And so today we're just going to spend some time just writing some jQuery. We're going to spend some time just writing some jQuery today. Just to do a variety of things. One of the things that I'm going to do is something that people like to see done. It's actually a really easy one to do for classes, or for like your final project when you're having to think of a jQuery script to put in there. So it's a really easy one to include, and that's going to be one that allows us to make a little dark mode switch. If you've seen like dark mode switches on websites, you can see you can press a button or flip a switch, and the switch itself has a little bit of additional code with it, but we'll do it with a little checkbox for our purposes here, just to try to keep it simple. And we'll just do a couple other things just to give you all some examples of jQuery and how we can use jQuery or make jQuery do some stuff for us. And also remember that jQuery is just JavaScript, so if you want to do something and you can't quite figure out how to do it in jQuery, but you remember how to do it in regular old JavaScript from, you know, Web 115 or CTI 110, or it's something that we learn in the coming weeks in Web 215, because I believe it is this week we're starting to get deep into JavaScript in that course. Then if you don't know how to do it in jQuery, jQuery is just another layer on top of JavaScript, so JavaScript basically also counts. So there is that. Let's switch my screen over here to the full view. I'm starting here on jQuery.com because of the way that we're getting jQuery. We're getting it through our CDN, or Content Delivery Network. Now, we talked about why we'd want to do this last week, right? Like if you'll remember back to last week, we said, you know, we use a content delivery network instead of trying to host it ourselves. One, just because it's easier for us to do. And two, it's because it kind of saves some resources for the people that are going to our website, right? If they go to other websites that use the same content delivery network as our site, which is highly likely, right? We looked at the millions upon millions of websites last week that still use jQuery. You know, if they go to another website that utilizes the file from the same CDN, then it'll already be cached on their computer, and so they don't have to download it again. So it saves minute bits of time, right? Like it shaves seconds off. That's one thing that we talk about in this class. Later on in the semester is sort of learning how to look at data from dev tools to help us optimize our sites. So, you know, when we're getting into optimization of websites, that, you know, oftentimes we're kind of talking about milliseconds there. So it is, or could be, I should say, something that would be important. But I'm going to click this big orange download jQuery button here, and that's going to take me to the location where I can download jQuery, right? Like the first part's up here, or where I can download the file. As we've said, we're not downloading the file. You could also download it through NPM or Yarn or Bower. In the spring, some of you might be taking the Web 285, which is next generation web development or cutting edge web tools or emerging web technologies. That's what it's called. Web 285 emerging web technologies in the spring, and in that course last year, and it'll probably be again this year, we talked about using the React framework and how we use the React framework to build websites. And NPM is a part of that. So if you're wondering, like, what's NPM? That's the Node Packet Manager. It's something that we'll talk about in the spring. But we're not going to worry about any of that. We're going to scroll down here until we get to this part where we are talking about using jQuery with a CDN. And we have a few different CDNs that we can use here. We can use the official jQuery CDN, which we can get to here on releases.jquery.com. I prefer to use the minified version, but really all of these will work the same. So if I click minified here, that will bring up my script, and I can just click to copy. That'll copy it to the clipboard. And so now I can paste it into my project and start using it. I already have a start of a website here, right? It's just a basic bare bones HTML skeleton. I have an empty style sheet. I have an empty script file here. It's all in a part 2 folder that will go in GitHub along with the part 1 folder that we did last time. So it'll all be together when I send it out here at the end of the live class today. But you'll see that I have my script link here that's linking to my script file. And I have my style sheet link here in the head that's linking to my style.css file. So right now, this is just a blank website. And we are going to add in the head that link that we just copied from the jQuery CDN. And so, that's not going to change the visual of my site, right? Like by default, that's just some predefined JavaScript functions that will help me write JavaScript. So it's not going to change the way my website looks. Unlike Bootstrap, which is what we start talking about next week. It's just going to give me the ability to write jQuery a little bit better. So what I want to do here really quickly is I want to just do some standard HTML and CSS just to build a little simple site. Right, so let's just build sort of our standard fair template, right, where we just have a header, a main, and a footer. In the header, let's put an H1 and let's have it go hello world. And in the main, let's put a paragraph. And we'll just put a little bit of dummy paragraph text. So let me grab some dummy text here from a website. Just so we can have a little bit of dummy text on our site. And we're going to roll with that. So let's save that really quickly. So we've got our H1 and our dummy text on our site now. And let's just do some styling. All right, so we'll start with our reset styles, which we do that with our asterisk selector. We'll zoom in a little bit here so you all can see this just a little bit easier. asterisk selector, which is our wildcard selector. And on that, we'll add box sizing, border box. And let's add a margin 0, padding 0, and just reset everything as we're getting started here. This is something that, just I like to do, right? As you're developing and you're kind of getting into your own style, might not be something you're interested in doing, is taking and resetting the margin and padding to 0. I like to kind of be able to control it. But if you just want to use the browser defaults on everything, then you can, right? Another thing that I like to do here is set font family to sans serif, just to have a sans serif font here. On the Web 2.10 course, for those of you who are in Web 2.10, that is actually one of the technical things that we look at a little bit later on in the course, is how we use different fancy fonts on websites. So that should be kind of fun when we get there. Let's see here. Let's just do some simple design here in our header and footer. We will give them a minimum height of, let's say, 10 viewport height. We'll give them a background color. I want to start out by making it a light background color. So, for example, let's go for like a light green. So let's say hashtag CCFFCC. Just like a real light green, right? Because I want to do like a dark mode thing in a little bit. So let's go for a real light green. Let's make the color of our H1 dark green, right? So let's say like 116611, something like that. So it'll still kind of be in that green family. We'll give that a save. And then we can see those changes on our site. Right, so we can see some things that we might want to do here. Right, like one of the things that I like is to just do a display grid on these items to make it easier to center vertically. Right, like we can center horizontally easily enough, but because that's just text align center. But centering vertically is sort of challenging unless we use display grid. And then I can, let's see, align items center, I believe is what I want. Yes, it is. And so align item center is a grid specific CSS rule. So it basically just says that, anything that's in the CSS grid, we can just align it to vertical center. So if we look at this now and we kind of refresh our page, we can see that hello world is vertically centered. Just so we don't spend too much time doing CSS, that's all I'll do for this. Or for the header and footer, I should say. Let's take our main background color white, padding. Let's give it a little bit of padding, like 1.2 rem. And let's margin 0 auto this to center it out. And let's give it a width. I haven't given it a width yet. Let's give it a width of, let's say 60 viewport width. And a height, or a min height, I should say, rather. Min height of 80 viewport height. And we'll put we haven't put a background color on the body yet. So let's put a background color on the body really quickly. And we'll make it like a yellow. So let's say background color, yellow. Just a straight up yellow. Or, you know what, let's go for a light yellow. So it would be something like a hashtag CCCC55. A more, or let's go something even lighter. Let's go for something like a just so it's not as like bright yellow. And I might even want to take this blue up a little bit just so it gets like closer to white, like the green parts. Right, so we just have like a nice green and yellow color combination here. Very simple, very, just kind of standard website template. So one of the first things that we can do is let's add our checkbox. And so I might want to do this like outside of the standard structure. So I'll do it up here at the top above the header. All right, so we'll do, so that's an input type equals checkbox. And now at the very tip top of our page, we just have a little checkbox here. Might be kind of hard to see. We'll zoom in a little bit. There's my little checkbox. And so we can kind of think about a little checkbox in this instance as sort of a toggle switch, right? One of the great things that jQuery can do is it has some built-in functions that make our life a little bit easier, that can check to see if a checkbox is checked versus it being unchecked. So this is basically one state of the checkbox when I check it, and unchecking it is a completely different state. So we can use a conditional to add logic to that. Let's add a little, we'll give this an ID of DM for dark mode. And let's give this a label too. Label 4 is going to be DM. And I'm just going to give it like a moon emoji for our purposes here. We'll give it like a crescent moon there. So now we have a little moon emoji here for our dark mode. And so there are different ways that you might see to kind of handle dark mode, right? We can kind of look at some of them as we kind of go through. One thing that you might do is change the colors of every element, right? Typically in a dark mode site, like it's meant for use in low light. So the colors of your monitor aren't as bright and kind of hurting your eyes. So you might switch it around and switch it to dark colors instead of light colors, so they're a little more palatable. In these instances, typically we see like white go to black, black go to white. Basically light colors go to darker color equivalents. That sort of thing. And so we can start to write our jQuery scripts now. And the first thing that we do for every jQuery script is we get it ready, right? And so that's sort of our very first event that we plan for, right? Remember one of the things that we've talked about in the past is how JavaScript is an event-based language. And so we kind of need to get JavaScript ready to be able to do an action. And actions are done on events. And the first event that happens is when the website's ready, right? We don't really want to do any anything with our jQuery until the website is ready, because that way we know that our script from our CDN has been loaded into browser memory. So when we start to write jQuery here, we know that it's good stuff, right? And that our browser will understand what we're doing. So we need to put our standard document ready syntax. So that is document.ready function. So remember kind of what we talked about previously. Every single sort of jQuery script that we write starts here, right? And we can put as many different things inside of this document.ready function as we want to put in here, right? We can put as many different button clicks or link clicks or other actions as we want to into this document.ready function. But we have to start with this document.ready function. We only need one of them, but we have to start here. Let's give ourselves a little bit of room to work. And so the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to call an action. I'm going to want to call a function on the click of that checkbox, right? And so since it's dark mode, we called that IDDM. So for $, parentheses, quotes, $DM, which is our dark mode checkbox, dot on click, we are going to run the following function. So this is basically whenever our DM checkbox is clicked, it's going to execute the following function. So on click, on hover, right? Which is one of the examples that I have in class, I think is on hover. A hover event is on mouse enter and on mouse leave. So it's two parts. So we could probably do a little hover event in our time today. But I want to be able to just do something when I click that function. So what I want to do is I want to check to see if the box is checked or not. So the first thing that I normally like to do when I'm writing a new function would be just to log a response out to the console. So I'm going to start with a console.log. And we're going to log the value of whether or not this box is checked. And that value is called a prop. So we're going to see if this, right, we're going to use the this keyword here. And this is a pretty cool keyword in jQuery because basically it just means on this thing that was clicked, right? On this thing that the function is currently running on. So when I say $this, like you're seeing here, that's basically saying on this item, right? On this DM class, on whatever, right? So we're going to look at this dot prop check. So we're just going to log to the console this dot prop checked, and that will check to see if the checked prop for this element is true or false. Let's bring our website back over here. And let's right-click Inspect Element to open up our Inspect tool. Let's look at the console window here so we can see the console. And we can click. And we can see that it logs true. Right, so when I clicked it and it checked the box, you can see over here in my console window that it logged true. And when I click it to uncheck the box, we can see that it logs false. So we can see that my checkbox is working here. Whenever I click that button, it logs true. And when I unclick it, it logs false. Right, so we know that that's working the way that we intended it to because of that. Right, so now we can kind of get rid of that console log and write some code that will do some changes. So I kind of want to keep this a little bit because I'm going to need to use this part of my statement here for a conditional, because that's what's returning the true or false, right? If it's checked, it's returning a true. If it's not checked, it's returning a false. So I can write an if this.prop checked, then we can do a thing. Right, for example, one of the things that we can do is for simpler elements, right? Like let's say our main here. If we wanted to go into a dark mode where something's only black and white, and we want to invert it into something that is white and black instead of black and white, or vice versa, we can actually use CSS filters here, and that's an easy way to do it. So I can say $main .css filter, comma, or no, not filter. What is it? Oh wait, yeah, filter. I was right. Filter, comma, inverted 1. Right, and so that will invert the colors of this area. And because it's a simple area, and we're just using black and white, then that is something that we can do here. Right, so if I click this here, whoops, what did I miss? Let's try. I was testing this earlier, and filter was kind of hit and miss. So it might just be the way that I'm trying to implement it is not. Let's try to do it at 100%. Yeah, that's weird. Let's console.log here and just make sure it's triggering. Yeah, that's part of the troubleshooting aspect. So it is triggering, it's just not doing the inversion. So we'll just have to kind of do it the old-fashioned way, which would be to just change the different elements, right? So I could do like the background color and have that be black instead of white. And so if we wanted to do one CSS rule and just change one CSS rule, this is how it looks in jQuery. One thing that annoys me about jQuery just a little bit is if we had multiple CSS rules to change on one element, then you have to like change the syntax. But if we pull our site over here now and we check that box, we can see it made that background of that main black. Text is still there. We just need to make it white. We need to make the text white. Right, so if I am writing a multiple CSS rule change here, I have to change my syntax here. So I have to put everything in here in curly braces. I separate them with a colon like I would if I was writing CSS. And then I separate rules with a comma. So color white. And I want to make sure that everything is in quotes here. So now one of the things that we see here, right, if we test this now, we can see it flips both of them. Right, the white background goes to black, the black background goes to white, or the black text goes to white, and we have a dark mode for that section. Right, one of the things that we'll notice though, since we don't have an else condition, if I try to click my checkbox again, nothing else happens. right? So what I want to do is I want to have an else condition here. So an else, that will basically just flip it back, right? Because our flip here only goes one way, right? So the prop's either checked or it isn't. So it's either true or false. So if it's not checked, then I can just take this code, copy and paste it, just duplicate it, and change the colors back. So the background color here would be white, and the color would be black. Right, so now we can kind of change that. And we can basically do that for all of our sections and all of our colors, right? So if we wanted to do, say, the header and footer, we could do that the same way, right? Let's look at our header. In this instance, we're starting with a light green CSS background and a dark green text, so we can just kind of flip those colors around. All right, so just to save myself a little bit of time here, I'm just going to copy these rules, because those are the exact same things I'm changing. I'm just going to change and use these colors in a different way. So instead of white here, we're going to use hashtag #CCFFCC. And instead of the black instead of the background there, we're going to use 116611. And I might even want to make that a little bit darker, right? So let's make it hashtag like 004400. Right, and we'll do the inversion here in else, right? And we'll just change them back to what they were before. All right, so here, what they were before, background color, CCFFCC, font color, 116611. All right, especially while we're learning like this, it's just super easy to approach each element as its own thing and change its own CSS rules on it. All right, so now we can see it flips around. Dark background, light text. We uncheck it, it flips back into light mode. We actually have a solve for that too when we get to that point. Because I don't necessarily want my dark mode label to be a moon when it's already in dark mode. I might want it to be a sun, right? So we might want to change that here in a little bit. We can do the same thing with our footer here. So let's just copy this, paste it in, replace that with footer. Copy this. It could be there. It should be there. It's just best practice to have it there. But it's not gonna yell at me if I don't have it there. That was just me being a little bit lazy. So I should have that semicolon there. Yeah, and as you can see there, when I add another line, I make sure to go back in and add it. But yes, it should be there. I was just being a little lazy there. So that would be the explanation behind that. No worries, no worries. I understand. So now we can see everything but the background should be changing now. Pretty cool, pretty nice. Let's get that background changing. So in that case, we're changing the body. So that's going to be on our body. We're going to .css. And this is only one rule, right? So we can just do background -color, comma, and this would turn into a dark yellow, right? So let's go for like a hashtag 444400, something like that. And we'll just copy that, put that in there, and change it back to what we were using, which was EEEEAA. We're getting there. We're getting the moon. We're getting to the moon to the sun. That'll be the next thing that I do. So give me just a minute. Let me get all the colors flipping first. There we go. So now we're in a dark mode. All dark colors, light colored text. Now we're in a light mode. No worries, no worries. I understand. I'm excited to see it too. So yeah, let's change that. Let's change that moon to a sun. And we would do that in this same section. We would just use a different jQuery function, right? Which is pretty cool. So basically, jQuery has a text method to where if I put something in there that is text, it would be the text of that element. Right? So my label here is where my moon is. Let's give it an let's give it an ID. ID equals DM underscore label. Just so we can select this label specifically. So now in my if condition here, I'm just going to add a $sign DM underscore label dot text. And that text function will just be sun now. So let's change that to a sun. And let's do the smiley face sun there so it looks the same, right? It's that full color emoji. And we'll just do the same thing in the else condition to where we sort of switch it back to, and to copy instead of cut. We'll switch it back to the moon. And so you can do that with anything that has or could contain text, right? So we could change the text on buttons. We could change the text on links. We could change the text in paragraphs. Anything that could contain text, you can use the text function. It will replace the text that is in there with the newly defined text, which is super cool. Or it should. Let's see, did I get that? Yeah, DM label. I could be thinking of another language though. Let me check something really, really quickly. That's what it should be doing. I'm calling it ID DM label. For DM is that. Behaving a little bit strangely here, so we're going to troubleshoot just a little bit. Let's, because that should be a sun there right now. Let's see here. No message. No new message, because that's for a plugin I have. So there's no message here. So let's console.log hashtag DM label dot text. Um, okay, it's not liking. That's interesting. I didn't actually try this part out. So it might just not like the emoji. So let's just try it with regular old letters, because yeah, that's not working either. Strange. We could do this a different way. Let's try it with .html instead of .text. HTML is an HTML function that returns the inner HTML. So it would be the equivalent of the inner HTML in regular old JavaScript. So let's give that a try. See if it likes that better. Huh. Doesn't seem to like that any better. Hmm. Let's try. Let's try pointing it generally at label instead of. Oh my goodness. That is a silly error I made. It happens to us all, everybody. That's an ID. That should have an ID selector on it. Oh my goodness. Make myself feel silly. Oh my goodness. Make myself feel silly. There it goes. Now it's switching. Of course, if you put the right selector in there, it'll switch. So it's a sun when it's in dark mode, and now it's a moon. It probably would make more sense to swap those around and have it show a moon when it is in dark mode and a sun when it's in light mode. So we just start with a sun also. And so now it's a sun because it's in light mode, and if we click it, it changes to a moon because it is now in dark mode. And we can click it back, and now it's a sun and a moon. Yeah, the thing that I was missing is I had forgotten to put that hashtag in front of the DM label there, and that's why I was just being a little careless and overlooked it. Yeah, but when the page loads, it always starts out loading what's in the HTML. Because remember, as a result of our document.ready here at the top, it's going to wait until everything else is loaded, until it loads the jQuery. So it's going to start out loading just what's on the page. So if you want it to be a sun in light mode and you want to start your page in light mode, then it should start out as a sun. If you want to start it out in dark mode, you'd want to start it out with the moon. And then you can just flip it back and forth. And we can see it there. Sun, moon, sun, moon, sun, moon. And so on. And let me see here. One of the things that I want to do is I want to look at some of the things that I'm asking you all to do in your lab assignment. Just so you have an example of everything that I've asked you all to do. Or at least most of the things. Let's see here. An alert window. I haven't shown you that. We can do a hover on something. And really, that just asks you to do 5 different custom jQuery scripts, and you could do anything. So I just give some suggestions there. The color based on the time of day is interesting, but that requires you using the time API, which, remember, when you're looking at your Making It Dynamic lab in the module, those ones that I have in there are just suggestions. They're not requirements, right? You could just kind of write your own jQuery to make things do what you want them to do. And technically, with the way that I look at it, right, like this, what we've done so far here does multiple things. Right? It changes. It's a script that changes this and this and this and this and does this. So that's multiple things. So I would count that as multiple scripts. An easy thing for us to do would be to do an alert box. So I can just add a button here that adds an alert box. Let's add a button. Show alert. Might be able to do some hover effects on that as well. We'll give it an ID of alert in our HTML. So now we just have a button on our page. There it is down here. I didn't put that inside of the main. That should go inside of the main instead of outside. So let's put that inside the main element there, so it's inside that middle box. There we go. And so remember that I want to do everything inside of this document ready function. I don't need to make another document ready function. I can just go down below this function that I've done here and start writing something new. So in this case, I just want to do another click function on this button. So this button has the ID of alert. So $, hashtag alert dot on click function. And this is just, and we're just doing an alert here. So in that case, all we need to do is just alert hello world. And so that just adds a simple alert box. All right, so if I click that button there, I get the alert pop up that says hello world. I close it, I click that button again, it comes back up. One of the cool things that I like doing with JavaScript and jQuery in general for like hovers is changing the text of buttons and links and stuff. You know, it's an example that I do a lot of. So maybe I wanted to change, like when you're hovering over this button here, maybe I want to change that from, can we make it pulse when we hover over it? Kind of like what we were doing in Web 2.15 this week. We could do that. let's see, I hadn't planned for that, but we could do it. What would be the best way? There are ways that you can like add CSS and remove CSS from elements. So let's see here. We can. I think what we'd want to do is we would want to add class, and then we'd want to remove class. So in order to do that, we'd have to start in our CSS. We would have to make an animation. So that's going to be at keyframes, pulse, 0% scale. Let me see here. It's getting late in the day. I'm starting to move quick. I don't want to mess up. Let's see. That is transform. Pulse or scale. 100%. And then we would do I'm just kind of slowing down just a second. We'd do like 3%. Transform, scale, 110%, 6%, transform, scale, 100%, and we could do that like a couple more times and do it at like 9, 12, 15, 18, and then carry it out to 100. So it's that way for the rest of it. So it'll just pulse 3 times really quickly. And then we'll add like a .pulse class. That will be animation. Pulse for time. I need time. So let's do like 3 seconds, pulse. Infinite. Ease and infinite. Something like that. And so, let's see here. In my script then, I would take and I would say alert dot on mouse enter function, and that would be a this dot add class. And then I think I just put the class name in quotes here, which would be Paul. And then I'd do another function, which would be alert dot on mouse leave function this dot remove class pulse. So I believe that's what we want to do here to get that to happen, so that whenever I hover over it, right, whenever I hover over it, it will add this CSS class that we made here, which is referring to this animation, these animation keyframes that we made here. And then whenever I leave, it'll take that class off, so it'll stop. So hopefully I wrote everything right and it'll work here. I guess we're about to find out. Yep, that looks good. So you can see when I hover over it, it shakes. And as long as I'm hovering over it, it'll repeat that animation. But when I mouse leave, it doesn't give me that animation anymore. Yay, I was able to remember it all. That's great. We can also take advantage of that and like chain on other things, which is one of the cool things about jQuery is you can actually chain onto it. So I could do like another line here, which was this dot text. Right, yeah, to slow it down, you would just change the percents in the CSS. Yeah, so I'd raise the percents. Exactly. But one of the cool things here is that I can just chain other functions onto this. So if I wanted to change the text, for example, I can just chain that on there and say, well, dot text as well. And we'll change it to click me. And for when the mouse leaves, we can do a dot text show alert. All right, just change it back to the text that's on the button when we make it here. All right, so now if we look at that, we'll see it's still wiggling, but it also changes the text to say click me. Instead of saying show alert, which is what it says by default. So let's see here. We got an alert. We're changing text on a button. We're adding animation to a button. We have a dark mode switch that does a lot of things. All right, and all this was relatively, like, overall pretty simple. Right, like this is a whole new thing, right? I'm giving you all this code. And I did a lot of stuff here in 31 lines of code. And some of those lines are empty lines. All right, so let me go through here and just clean a couple things up really quickly. Let me think of maybe something else that I would want to demonstrate that would be really quick, because we're coming up on our hour here. Is there anything else that I would want to demonstrate that would be super quick to do? We did that. We did that. Let's see, that does that. Let me just see what all is in. Just check out all the stuff that's in. I'm just going to check out all the stuff that's in the course too, just to see. what is in there. There's a good example in the course of the jQuery hover, because the jQuery hover is, so the hover action in jQuery is a single action that does both on mouse enter and on mouse leave. So it's basically the same thing as this on mouse enter and on mouse leave. It just kind of crams them both together into one thing. I find this syntax a little bit easier. So this is the way that you might want to do it, but there is an example in the module in the comparing scripts to item that shows how a single hover event would be applied to an element. Let's see, I think the converting JavaScript to jQuery, I think that lab, I think you all have the tools to do now. And then the making it dynamic lab is just 5 scripts of any type, and we did what I would count as like 8 to 10 scripts here today. Because I consider changing the text a different thing. I consider changing these colors a different thing. I consider this a different thing. These are both different things, right? Because you're both adding and removing classes and doing text. Right, so when I say like 5 different scripts, I just basically mean to make it do 5 different things. Right, so we at least did 5 here, and I'd probably count this more. Like we're changing the text here as well as the adding and removing the classes. So that's like 3 things. We're changing this text, it's a 4th thing. Changing all this CSS, that's a 5th thing. And then the alert box is a 6th thing. So yeah, a lot of stuff being done there. Plus the supplementary videos, plus all the material in the module, plus the kind of basic stuff that we did last week. I think you all have the tools at this point to be able to work and figure it out. So I think we'll go ahead and leave it here for today. You know, that's part of learning it, is just kind of getting your feet wet and trying it out and figuring it out. So we'll give you all this code in the GitHub. In fact, let me go ahead and push it up before I forget. And this is already in an existing repo. So I'd want to go cd, I'd want to go git add dot, I'd want to go git commit -m added part 2 demo and git push origin master. Whoops. Git push origin main. What did we call it? I've forgotten. That might have been one we called it something different, and now I don't remember. So let me just look at my GitHub really quickly. Let's see, this, and the branch is new branch. So it would be git push origin new branch. There we go. Now we're good. I just had to remember what I called that branch. It's a good thing that it tells you what the branch is on GitHub. So now, if I refresh this page, I should have a part 2 here. There it is. And so we'll send all that out with the recording. We'll take any questions if anybody has one right now. We'll just kind of pause a minute here for questions. Back on the jQuery page, which file did I download? So I went to, we'll go through that. I'll go through that process again real quick. That's a good question. I went to the download jQuery page. Clicked on that big orange button there. So jQuery.com, big orange button. I scrolled down until I got to using jQuery with a CDN. And there's this link here that says releases.jquery.com. This is the one I clicked. And I got the 3.7.1 minified version. Really, any of these will work. But I used the 3.7.1 minified. And I just clicked that, copy, it'll come up with the script code for that. Then you can just copy it and paste it into your project. So that right there is what I pasted here in the header of my HTML. And remember that it's using the CDN to get the file, so it's the file's online, utilizing the content delivery network. So I'm not actually downloading anything, I'm just using a file somebody else has, which they're letting me use. Just hold another minute or two just in case there are any more questions today. And of course, if you're watching the recording or you think of something later, you can always send me an email or a Teams message and just ask what you need. It's no problem at all. All right. Since I'm not seeing anything else at the moment, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. We'll go ahead and wrap up here. We'll get this recording and the demo files out as soon as possible. Thanks for watching. If you come up with a question later, feel free to send me an email or a Teams message. We'll answer it to the best of our ability. But that's all that I've got for you for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.